Have you ever just found yourself totally caught up in that relentless inner voice,
Hmm.
where your mind just will not shut
Oh,
down?
absolutely.
Whether you're trying to focus on something important or maybe just relax after a tough day or
Mhm.
even just take in new information, it feels like your brain's just stuck on repeat,
Yeah.
right? Rehashing the past, worrying about the future. It can get incredibly loud in there.
It really can. And, we often operate under this really deep but usually unconscious assumption that we are that voice, that we are that endless stream of thinking.
Right.
But what if that very identification, that belief, is actually the source of so much of our anxiety and that feeling of being overwhelmed?
That is exactly what we're going to unpack today. Welcome, everyone, to a deep dive into Eckhart Tolle's really quite groundbreaking work, The Power of Now.
Hmm.
And this isn't about, getting lost in complex philosophy or some kind of obscure spiritual ideas. Tolle offers a remarkably direct path. It's about finding inner peace, finding freedom, just by shifting how you experience life itself.
Yeah, and our goal here, our mission in this deep dive, is really to distill Tolle's most potent insights. We want to give you a clear roadmap, sort of, to understand what he actually means by living in the now,
Right.
and how grasping this, it's quite a radical concept, actually, how it can really transform your day-to-day experience, cutting through all that mental noise to get to these surprising bits of wisdom that are often, well, right there in front of us.
So let's start with the origin story of the book itself. It's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
It really is. Tolle talks about this period of intense despair he went through, which then led to this spontaneous personal awakening.
Yeah.
He describes waking up one night just filled with this overwhelming dread, and then suddenly a shift.
Just like that.
Just like that. He says he heard a bird chirping outside his window, and it was like he heard it for the first time, not just with his ears, but with his whole being. He saw the light coming through the curtains and felt it as love itself, he says. Everything seemed fresh and pristine, like it had just been born. And what's so fascinating is how that single moment really shaped his entire message. He realized that this profound, radiant joy, this unshakable peace we're always chasing externally, it's not something you achieve.
It's already there.
It's already there. You already possess it. People would come up to him later and say, I want what you have. And his answer was always the same. You have it already. You just can't feel it because your mind is making too much noise. And that simple yet profound realization, that was the seed for the power of now.
He has that great parable, too, the one about the beggar.
Oh, yes. That's a powerful one.
Yeah, imagine someone sitting on this old wooden box for, like, 30 years, just begging for change, completely unaware that the box they're sitting on is packed full of gold.
Exactly. And Tolle says, we are that beggar. We're sitting on this immense inner treasure, this inherent peace, this joy, but we're constantly looking outside ourselves for little scraps of pleasure or validation, missing the boundless wealth that's already ours.
Which leads him to that really quite radical idea, doesn't it? That thinking has become a disease.
It sounds extreme at first, right? But he clarifies. He's not saying thinking itself is bad. Obviously, it's an essential tool.
Of course.
But he uses that analogy of cell division. It's good, it's necessary, but when it goes wild, when it proliferates uncontrollably and ignores the whole organism, it becomes cancerous.
Okay, I see the connection.
It's the same with the mind. It's a fantastic instrument when you use it properly, but when it takes over, when it starts using us, that's when it becomes destructive. The core delusion, he says, is believing you are your mind.
That's the delusion.
That's the delusion. The instrument has taken you over.
So he's basically throwing down a challenge.
Yeah.
Can you find the off button for your mind? Not like to permanently stop thinking, which isn't really possible or even desirable.
Right?
But can you recognize when you're just being dragged around by this constant, often negative inner chatter?
Exactly. And this identification with the mind, the screen, he calls it, of concepts, labels, images, words, judgments, it actually blocks real connection.
How so?
It creates a barrier between you and your deeper self, between you and other people, between you and the natural world, even between you and, whatever you conceive of as God or spirit. It creates what he calls the illusion of separateness.
Ah, the illusion of separateness.
And that feeling of being separate, that's the root of fear, conflict, that sense of isolation we often feel.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. So if identifying with the mind is the illusion, what's a practical way out? How does Tolle suggest we actually cultivate this state of presence he talks about?
Well, the central practice he offers is something he calls watching the thinker.
Watching the thinker.
It's about listening to that voice in your head, the one that's always commenting, judging, worrying, observing those repetitive thought patterns like old records stuck on repeat. But the key is, you do it without judgment.
Without getting caught up in it.
Precisely. This act of just witnessing, this witnessing presence, he calls it, is crucial. When you observe your thoughts without being swept away by them, it activates what he terms a higher level of consciousness. You start to see that thought is actually only a tiny, tiny aspect of a much bigger intelligence within you. You begin to realize that the things that truly matter, beauty, love, creativity, joy, inner peace, they don't come from the thinking mind. They arise from beyond it.
And he's very clear, isn't he, that this isn't about becoming like mindless or regressing.
Absolutely. He says, enlightenment means rising above thought, not falling back to a level below thought, the level of an animal or a plant.
Right.
In an awakened state, you still use your thinking mind. You need it for practical things. But it becomes a focused tool you use intentionally, not this involuntary, nonstop internal noise.
So the mind becomes a servant again, not the master.
Exactly. And true creativity, he points out, whether you're an artist or even a scientist like Einstein, often emerges from this no-mind state, this stillness. Einstein himself said thinking played only a minor role in the actual breakthrough moments.
Interesting.
It's like an oscillation, Tolle suggests, between thought and stillness. And if you really want to grasp the intelligence beyond thinking, he says, just consider the incredible intelligence operating in a single human cell, in its DNA. It's vastly more complex than our conscious minds can fathom.
Okay, so we watch the thinker. But what about emotions? They feel just as powerful, sometimes even more overwhelming than thoughts. How do we work with those according to Tolle?
That's a great question, and yes, they are incredibly powerful. For Tolle, the term mind isn't just about thoughts. It includes emotions and even those unconscious mental emotional reactions we have.
So it's all connected.
Deeply connected. An emotion, he explains, is basically the body's reaction to your mind. It's a physical reflection of what your mind is doing.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you have an attack thought, someone wronged me, this is unfair. That thought manifests in your body as the energy of anger. Or if you have a threat thought, something bad might happen that manifests as the physical feeling of fear or anxiety.
Okay, the body reacting to the mind.
Yes. And here's a really fascinating point he makes. If your mind and your emotion are in conflict, say, you're telling yourself you're fine, but you feel terrible, the thought will be the lie, the emotion will be the truth.
Wow. Okay, so the emotion is more honest in that sense.
It's a more direct reflection of your inner state at that moment, less filtered by mental concepts. So the practice is essentially the same as watching thoughts. You observe the energy of the emotion, you feel it fully in your body.
But you don't become it.
Exactly. You don't let it take you over, you don't identify with it as me, you become the watcher, the observing presence of that feeling.
And why is that so important?
Because doing this brings the unconscious, the feeling, the pattern into the light of your awareness. That's how it starts to dissolve. And it also helps us differentiate between, say, fleeting pleasure and true joy.
What's the difference there?
Well, pleasure and what we usually call happiness are part of the mind's world of duality. They always have an opposite pain or unhappiness. But the deeper states, like love, joy, peace, these arise from beyond the mind, Tolle says, and they have no opposite. They're inherent qualities of being.
Like the sun behind the clouds analogy you mentioned earlier.
Exactly like that. The sun hasn't gone away just because clouds are covering it. Love, joy, peace are always there within us, just often obscured by the clouds of our mind's activity.
Which brings us to fear, specifically psychological fear.
Yes. Tolle points out something crucial. Psychological fear is always of something that might happen, not of something that is happening now.
It's future-oriented.
Completely. It's the mind projecting into the future, creating this anxiety gap. It's different from, say, the practical common sense that stops you sticking your hand in a fire, that's responding to a present danger. Psychological fear is this constant low-level or sometimes high-level unease about a future that doesn't actually exist yet. It's the mind being lost in time.
Okay, so if we're not our minds and watching the thinker and feeling our emotions is the way in, what about all that stuff from the past? The old hurts, the traumas. Tolle has a specific term for that, doesn't he? The pain body.
He does. And yes, that sounds pretty heavy and it can feel formidable. The pain body is his term for the accumulated emotional pain from your past that gets lodged energetically in your mind and body.
And it's active.
Oh, yes. He says it wants to survive, just like any entity. And it feeds on experiences that resonate with its own energy signature, basically. Anything that creates more pain. like anger, resentment, destructive thoughts or actions, emotional drama, conflict, even identifying strongly with physical illness sometimes. It seeks out situations to feed itself. It can feel like this dangerous monster inside.
That sounds quite bleak.
It can feel that way, but here's the key. Tolle reassures us that, despite how powerful it feels, the pain body is ultimately an insubstantial phantom, and what it's most afraid of is the light of your consciousness.
So awareness is the antidote again.
Exactly. The moment you become aware of it, the moment you observe it, feel its energy field within you without identifying with it, just bringing your full attention to it, that identification is broken.
You're not it anymore.
You're the awareness of it. And that awareness, that presence, is a higher dimension of consciousness. It comes in and begins to transmute or dissolve the old pain. That's the real transformative power of the now.
This connects to his idea about psychological time, doesn't it? This obsession with past and future.
Directly. Our deep identification with the past, regret, resentment, defining ourselves by history, and our compulsive projection into the future, anxiety seeking fulfillment later, he calls this psychological time. And he goes so far as to call it a mental disease.
That's strong language.
It is, but he backs it up. He uses the chilling historical example of ideologies like communism, where he says 50 million people were murdered to further the cause, creating a present hell in the name of achieving some imagined future heaven.
And we see that on a smaller scale in our own lives constantly, right?
Constantly. Always trying to get somewhere other than where you are. Always seeing the present moment as just a stepping stone, a means to an end, something to get through on the way to some better future moment. We're perpetually waiting to start living.
This leads to one of those real aha moments in the book for me.
Which one is that?
The idea that ultimately this is not about solving your problems. It's about realizing that there are no problems.
Yes. Only situations to be dealt with now, or to be left alone and accepted as part of the isness of the present moment.
That is such a huge shift in perspective.
Isn't it? Because a problem is something our mind creates. It lives in psychological time, fueled by dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. A situation, however, is just what is right now. It's concrete. You can either deal with it now or accept it as part of the present reality if you can't.
The problems need time to survive.
Exactly. They are mind-made and feed on time. Think about emergencies, real emergencies. What happens? You're forced into total presence, your mind stops chattering, and as Tolle says, something infinitely more powerful takes over. You just act.
And this reframing connects directly to his take on surrender, which people often misunderstand, I think.
They really do. People hear surrender and think it means giving up, being passive, fatalistic.
Yeah, like defeat.
But for Tolle, surrender is the exact opposite of weakness. It's about intelligently accepting what is in the present moment, yielding to the reality of I align. Now, not resisting it mentally or emotionally. And this acceptance transforms you internally. It's an active, powerful inner stance.
Not resignation, but acceptance.
Precisely. He uses that analogy of a powerful flashlight cutting through fog. The fog is your life situation, all tangled up with past and future thoughts and emotions. The clear space right in front of the flashlight beam, that's the now. Your conscious presence is the flashlight.
And resisting the now.
Resisting what is just hardens the ego, tightens the body, creates inner conflict, and blocks the natural flow of life energy, he says. Acceptance allows that energy to move.
So how does all this apply to relationships? They're such a huge part of life, often seen as the main source of happiness or unhappiness.
Right. And Tolle has a pretty radical view here, too. He says relationships aren't primarily here to make you happy. They are here to make you conscious.
Ooh, okay, that's different.
It is. He explains that things like addictive clinging, neediness, possessiveness, those intense love-hate cycles, they often arise from our egoic needs, our sense of lack, or our unconscious pain bodies seeking drama or validation.
Things we project onto the other person.
Exactly. True love, he argues, the deep connection, has no opposite because it arises from beyond the mind. It's not based on egoic need. And here's a profound point. You don't need both people in a relationship to be conscious for it to become a spiritual practice.
Really? Just one is enough?
Sanity consciousness can only come into this world through you, he says. If you consistently practice presence, bring awareness to your reactions within the relationship, that changes the dynamic entirely. Your partner might be drawn into that presence with you, or if the dysfunction is too strong, the relationship might naturally dissolve.
He also talks specifically about women in consciousness, doesn't he?
Yes, he offers some specific insights there. He suggests that women, perhaps due to their generally stronger connection to the body and its natural cycles, might be naturally closer to being and therefore potentially closer to enlightenment.
Interesting. And he mentions the collective female pain body.
He does. He speaks about this accumulation of suffering endured by women over millennia: subjugation, violence, the pain of childbirth, which can become activated as a collective energy field. For many women, he notes, this collective pain can awaken quite powerfully during the menstrual cycle.
That sounds like a heavy burden.
It can feel that way, but Tolle reframes it. He sees it not just as a burden, but potentially as the most powerful spiritual practice. If a woman can remain present during that time, become the conscious knowing of the pain, rather than being identified with it and overwhelmed by it, it becomes a sacred time of transmutation.
Wow. And a conscious partner can help.
Absolutely. A conscious male partner, he suggests, can profoundly support this process simply by holding a strong space of presence and acceptance without judgment or trying to fix it.
He also touches on being an outsider. He uses the example of being gay and how that might actually be an advantage.
Yeah, it's a fascinating point. Being different in some way, being an outsider to mainstream societal norms, can paradoxically push you to disidentify from socially conditioned patterns of thought and behavior much earlier or more easily than others. It forces a kind of questioning.
But there's a potential pitfall.
Yes, the caution is always against then creating a new, strong, egoic identity around that difference, around being the outsider. That just becomes another mental trap, another form of identification.
It always comes back to non-identification.
Always. Which leads to another core practice: die to the past every moment.
Let it go.
Constantly. You don't need it, he says bluntly. Only refer to it when it is absolutely relevant to the present. Things like chronic worry, that's just the mind getting lost in an imaginary future that doesn't exist, projecting past fears forward.
And that line, you can always cope with the now.
But you can never cope with the future. Because the future isn't here. The strength, the insight, the right action, the resource you needed will be there when the now becomes that future moment, not before. Worrying about it now is useless and draining.
So bringing this all together, what does an awakened life look like in Tully's view? What about finding peace, purpose, compassion?
Well, crucially, he explains that genuine inner peace isn't dependent on external conditions being good or positive, unlike fleeting happiness.
It's independent.
Yes. In fact, things that appear bad from the ego's perspective, limitation, failure, loss, illness, these can actually be our greatest teachers. They can break down egoic structures and lead to real depth, humility, and eventually peace. When you're in a state of acceptance, of non-resistance to what is, then even difficult situations contain, as he puts it, only a higher good.
That requires a deep trust.
It does. And this is where the true art of living emerges. He uses that wonderful, simple example of ducks fighting.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
They fight for a few seconds, it's intense, then it's over. They flap their wings vigorously a couple of times.
Releasing the energy?
Exactly, releasing the surplus energy. And then they just swim on peacefully, side by side, as if the fight had never happened. No story, no resentment.
If only we could do that.
Well, that's the practice. It connects directly to non-resistance in our human interactions. When you're truly present, insults or attacks might still happen externally, but internally, it is as if there is nobody there to get hurt anymore. That, he says, is forgiveness. Not a mental act, but a state of being.
And that Zen story about the butcher.
Banzan, yes. The butcher says, every piece of meat I have is the best. There is no piece of meat here that is not the best. And hearing that, Banzan is enlightened.
Because?
Because he realizes the profound truth. Every moment, when fully accepted, when met with presence, is the best moment. Not because of its content, but because of the quality of awareness brought to it. That's enlightenment in everyday life.
What about things like prosperity and purpose? We're often taught those lie in the future, achieving goals.
Tolle flips that script too. He says, gratitude for the present moment and the fullness of life now is true prosperity, not waiting for something external. And he distinguishes between our outer purpose, goals, achievements, the future-oriented stuff.
Which has its place.
Which has its place, absolutely. But it's secondary to our inner purpose. And our inner purpose is simply the quality of your consciousness at this moment. Are you present? Are you aware? Your whole inner journey, he stresses, is just one step, the step you're taking right now.
And this inner shift, this awakening of consciousness in individuals, this is what truly changes the world, more than activism or fixing symptoms.
That's his fundamental point. Compassion, he explains, isn't just pity. It's the deep felt awareness of a bond between yourself and all creatures, rooted in the shared ground of being and even the shared reality of mortality.
A sense of unity.
Exactly. And he argues powerfully that all evils are the effect of unconsciousness. Wars, cruelty, destruction, they arise from minds identified with ego, fear, and separation. Therefore, the primary task for healing the planet isn't just rearranging the outer forms, but for individuals to awaken out of identification with form, to become, through your presence, the light of the world.
And that presence dissolves suffering.
It dissolves unconsciousness at its root, at the level of cause. You teach peace primarily by being peace. Your state of consciousness has a ripple effect.
So it comes down to a choice then.
Ultimately, yes, he contrasts two paths. There's enlightenment through suffering, what he calls the way of the cross. Life pushes you, suffering becomes so intense that you're eventually forced into surrender because the pain is unbearable.
The hard way.
The hard way. Or there's enlightenment consciously chosen. This is where you choose to relinquish your attachment to past and future. You choose to make the now the main focus of your life. You recognize, as he powerfully states, that time and pain are inseparable.
Time and pain are inseparable.
If you believe you need more time, more future time to be happy, fulfilled, or free, you'll just get more time. And inevitably, with more psychological time comes more pain, more waiting, more dissatisfaction. The choice to step out of that cycle, Tolle reminds us, is always available. Right here. Right now.
So wrapping this up, what does this all really mean for you, listening right now? I think the core message is incredibly clear, isn't it?
It really is.
You are not your mind. That voice in your head isn't the real you. Presence, awareness in this moment is the gateway out of suffering. And true peace, real purpose, genuine love, they aren't found out there or later. They're only found in the now.
And Tolle leaves us with such a potent image to consider, doesn't he? He says, if you looked in the mirror and did not like what you saw, you'd have to be mad to attack the image in the mirror.
Right.
That is precisely what you do when you are in a state of non-acceptance.
Wow. So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider, what image are you attacking in your own life? What reality are you fighting against simply by resisting this present moment?
What might change profoundly if you simply chose to accept what is right now, knowing that this very acceptance isn't weakness, but the doorway to true power and peace?
This deep dive has hopefully shown you the how pointed towards the path, the what, the direct experience is now yours to discover.